On News Hour tonight, Senate approves Tinubu's 1.15 trillion naira domestic loan to fund 2025 budget deficits. UN names Nigeria, Mali among 16 hunger crisis hotspots. Plateau farmers' herders limit activities to homes over fear of attacks. And from the foreign scene, 6 people die in a stampede during a military recruitment event in Ghana. Hello and welcome to News Hour on Trust TV. My name is Idris Dayabature. And now the Nigerian Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to raise 1.15 trillion naira from the domestic debt market to finance the unfunded portion of the 2025 budget deficits. The approval came after the Senate adopted a report from the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt during Wednesday's plenary session. The report.
The report highlighted that the 2025 Appropriation Act sets total expenditure at nearly 60 trillion naira, an increase of 5.25 trillion naira over the initially proposed 54.74 trillion naira. The budget's expansion resulted in a deficit of 14.10 trillion naira. Of this, 12.95 trillion naira has already been approved for borrowing, leaving an unfunded gap of approximately 1.15 trillion naira, which the Senate has now authorized to be raised domestically.
Let the Senate do approve Mr. President's request to establish a 1 trillion 150 billion naira borrowing program in the domestic debt market to close the unfunded deficit gap created by the increase in the budget size over and above the prior approved revenue and borrowing plans. Those in favor of these recommendations say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. That the federal, that's recommendation 2, that the Federal Ministry of Finance and Debt Management Office should undertake the borrowing strictly within approved fiscal parameters, ensuring that all terms and conditions, conditions favorable, transparent, and sustainable. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
In another move, the Senate adopted a motion by Senator Abdul Nengi mandating the Committee on Appropriations to intensify oversight over the implementation of borrowed funds. The committee is tasked to ensure that the money is used effectively within the 2025 fiscal year and strictly for the intended purposes.
The Appropriation Committee should ensure that the borrowing is actually to fund the 2025 appropriation.
This decisive legislative action underscores the Senate's commitment to fiscal responsibility and transparency as Nigeria navigates its 2025 budgetary challenges.
Now in September, President Bola Tinubu said his administration will stop borrowing domestically from banks, arguing that such loans were squeezing credit available to the private sector. He also announced that the government had met its non-oil revenue target for the year, projecting a shift towards sustainable revenue generation. Barely a month after, fresh reports show that the government has returned to the domestic debt market seeking new loans to finance the 2025 budget deficit. The Debt Management Office confirmed fresh bond issuances, while the president also sent new borrowing requests to the National Assembly. This reversal contradicts the president's earlier position and raises questions about fiscal discipline and transparency.
There's a guarantee there. I know many of you had to suffer the initial abuse and the fear. Where are we going? We know the direction that we should go. We are going up. No, those who may not know will not know. Today I'm standing before you, I can brag that Nigeria is not borrowing, it's dying from local bank. The revenue, we have met our target of revenue for the whole year. We met it in August. I've reviewed this morning.
All right, now joining us via phone line is economist Yushewu Aliyu. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, now you just watched what the president earlier said some few months or years back. Now, the president earlier said he was leaving domestic debts for the benefit of Nigerians, but now he's seeking new domestic loans. What could be behind this policy reversal?
You know, for any financial year or any fiscal year, government has to look at the fiscal responsibility and at the same time also look at certain parameters that are helping to understand the situation of the economy, especially debt to GDP and then debt to revenue. But when we look at what the president is submitting and is communicating to Nigerians, it's not out of his policy of renewed hope agenda. But obviously, my own opinion with regard to this sequence of borrowing is that if the economy can be able to save above 11 trillion from the subsidy revenue, and if the economy will continue to source additional revenue from different sectors of the economy, then there is need to put some caution so that we cannot put pressure to our internally generated revenue, especially when we consider debt servicing, which is very paramount.
Now, does this shift suggest that the government fiscal strategy has changed, or is it a sign of pressure from economic realities such as revenue shortfalls?
No, it's just as a result of certain policy adjustment, which from time to time you have to carefully look at the policy option, especially once you are dealing with the financial year, because there are features that are domestic in nature, there are features of that are also exogenous in nature. If you look at the benchmark at which we pegged our revenues from the crude sales, you will realize that the price has changed. So if that perspective is introducing issue, then it is now the responsibility of the president, the responsibility of the National Assembly to always look at the benchmark at which we are accruing some of our incomes. That is one aspect. The second aspect also, we look at the reform, especially in the fiscal aspect, especially now that we are expecting by January to have a new tax law which is going to be effective. Not only being effective, we are going to have additional revenues. So these are some of the things we look in pegging the content of our provisions in the budget and also the aspect of our priorities in budgeting system.
Now, how might this U-turn affect investor confidence and the broader economic stability the administration is trying so hard to achieve?
I think the central bank, we have to commend the central bank because it has adopted policy measures that is stabilizing Naira, that is putting down inflation to about 18.2%, and at the center also providing windows at which foreign exchange can be more stable with above 43 billion. So these are some of the stability measures that we are expecting to be growing with time. And the second option is that the fiscal responsibility of the Ministry of Finance, the Debt Management Office, has to also look into the types of loan we are engaging, and not only the types of loans, the condition attached to them, because these are things that will have short-term effect and long-term effect. But for stability purposes, we have to give emphasis to our revenue generation, and we also have to give additional attention to our revenue sharing formula, which we are always emphasizing on a monthly basis, and which also produce some dangers to liquidity, which can also increase tension to our price volatility.
All right, thank you so much, Yusho Aliyu, for being part of this discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, two UN food agencies on Wednesday warned that millions more people around the globe could face famine, with funding shortfalls worsening already dire conditions. The joint report from the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Programme said conflict and violence were driving acute food insecurity in the majority of the countries identified at risk. The farm-based agencies listed Haiti, Mali, Palestine, South Sudan, Sudan and Yemen as the worst, where populations face an imminent risk of catastrophic hunger. Also classified as a very high concern were Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, Nigeria, Somalia and Syria, with Burkina Faso, Chad, Kenya and the situation of the Rohingya refugees in the Bangladesh also making the list. Funding for humanitarian relief was falling dangerously short, the report stated, noting that only $10.5 billion had been received out of the required $29 billion to assist those at risk. WFP said that due to funding cuts, it had reduced assistance for refugees and displaced people while suspending school feeding programs in some countries. Now, as the cost of living crisis worsens, questions are emerging about how economic hardship is affecting nutrition and public health. Although food prices have dropped slightly in recent weeks, many families say they still cannot afford a healthy meal. Trust TV's Abdulaziz Ibrahim report from Kano on the growing malnutrition crisis.
Experts say malnutrition is not just about the absence of food, but a crisis that has two faces, namely undernutrition on one hand and overweight or obesity on the other. Both forms are becoming increasingly visible across Nigeria, according to nutritionist Awal Musa.
What we call the 102 forms of diet. They can eat rice and macaroni. They eat rice and beans, maybe with oil and pepper, and drink water. This is not a healthy diet. When you go to the other people that has higher income level, they also usually eat highly proteinous food. They can finish one chicken in a day and 1/4 of ram in a day. They eat only one portion of which is what we call proteinous and fat.
For 55-year-old Abdullahi Mohammed, despite the slight drop in food prices, feeding his family of 8 remains a daily struggle. Even when the price goes down, the money does not have much value. 1,000 naira these days cannot go very far. So we just buy what we can afford, not actually what we need. Across the country, the human face of inadequate nutrition is visible. Experts link the problem in many areas to insecurity, displacement, poor dietary habits, low education levels, and above all, economic instability.
Father, as a clinician, the problem is more with the women, the men. Because it's easier for a man to agree that his wife breastfeeds his child very well. It's economically beneficial to him, it's convenient for him, and then but a lot of deep-rooted cultural beliefs in our grandmothers tend to kind of say, we are in this hot, the weather is very hot, the breast is not good for the baby, blah, 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 all sorts of things. So targeting the mothers who are who born the child and then also carrying the breast milk will go a long way in addressing the issue than men. Of course, men need to know to support their mothers, their wives with nutritious food and the time and energy to be able to breastfeed their children very well. So men can play a role, but the major target is women.
At Isiaq Arabiu Pediatric Hospital, staff say they treat an average of 50 cases of child malnutrition every week. Patients are brought in from urban and rural communities across Kano and neighboring states. Her body started swelling and even her belly that we couldn't carry her on the back for the past 6 months. He used to eat different kinds of food, but now he can't eat anything except the special pap they give him here. To reverse this trend, experts are calling for stronger nutrition education campaigns for parents and caregivers, as well as training for farmers on how agricultural practices affect nutrition outcomes.
Healthy diet is not something that they require a huge amount of money. You have to know what should I diversify my diet to get all the essential requirement that my body or your body required or needed.
In the midst of economic challenges, hunger may be visible, but malnutrition runs deeper. Although programs like school feeding schemes and food aid interventions exist, experts say implementation often falls short. They are urging government and stakeholders to increase funding for nutrition programs and improve treatment access for malnourished children. Abdulaziz Ibrahim, Trust TV News, Kano.
Now, in a related development, worsening economic hardship and persistent insecurity have deepened the hunger and malnutrition crisis in Katsina State, northwest Nigeria. Experts link the rising cases of child malnutrition and preventable deaths to economic deprivation and years of banditry that have crippled livelihoods across local communities. Trust TV's Abdullahi Ahmadi has more.
Records from Medicines Sans Frontiers, MSF, also known as Doctors Without Borders, reveal that Katsina is among the states worst hit by hunger, with over 600 malnourished children reported dead in just 6 months. Across the state, thousands of people, especially vulnerable households and displaced families, go to bed hungry every day, many without shelter or access to basic health care. It has also become a common sight in Katsina City and other major towns to see people, including women and children, loitering around motor parks, filling stations, and public spaces, begging for food to survive. The recent surge in food prices, driven by inflation, has further strained already struggling households, making nutritious meals increasingly unaffordable. This meal is what you depend on for the whole day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We queue here every day to collect it. Otherwise, we go hungry. What we collect here is what we eat, and it has been like this for years. A philanthropist feeds over 10,000 households daily. We thank God for the gesture. As you can see, both women and children come here to collect food. It's the last resort for many of us. Most of us are displaced from our communities. If you miss this food, you go home disappointed. This is just one of many centers across Katsina where meals are shared to vulnerable families. Many of us were once well off, but lost everything to banditry. Children remain the most affected, many facing preventable death caused by severe malnutrition. In response to the growing crisis, the Katsina State government says it has set up a special committee to investigate and address the problem, particularly in the most affected communities. According to findings from the committee, about 50% of the state's population is now at risk of falling into a vulnerable nutritional status. The committee recommends both short and long-term measures to tackle malnutrition, including increased funding for food and nutrition emergencies, early diagnosis and treatment of malnourished children, and continuous education and awareness campaigns for parents and caregivers. Experts are calling for stronger humanitarian interventions and adequate funding to support vulnerable households and communities most affected by hunger and displacement. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Kazana.
Now, Kaduna State Governor Obasani has called for the urgent establishment of state police, describing it as essential to Nigeria's fight against insecurity. He also noted that the regional security outfit like Amotekun in the southwest serve only as temporary stopgap measures. Sani spoke in Lagos on Tuesday at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs Distinguished Lectures series titled The Role of State Government in Overcoming Insecurity in Nigeria. Sani, who delivered the lecture, stressed that governors must be constitutionally empowered to lead security efforts. He highlighted the inadequacy of national security personnel, noting that Nigeria has fewer than 400,000 police officers and less than 250 military personnel to serve over 230 million people. Meanwhile, Kebbi State Governor Dr. Nasir Idris renewed his call for stronger collaboration among security agencies, analysts, and the media in combating banditry. Speaking at the Arewa Media Security Summit in Birnin Kebbi on Monday, Idris highlighted the state investment in security operations, community engagement, and humanitarian recovery initiatives that have enabled the resettlement of several displaced communities. Now, the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria for the 19 northern states and the Federal Capital Territory, Reverend Joseph Hayab, has said that the U.S. President Donald Trump's warning to Nigeria over the killings of Christians was misrepresented. Speaking on Wednesday, Hayab said Trump did not threaten to invade Nigeria, but instead urged the federal government to take decisive action against terrorists targeting Christians. According to the cleric, acknowledging the reality of attacks against Christians is the first step toward national healing. He urged that instead of dismissing victims' pain, government officials should engage in honest dialogue about the crisis. Hayab noted that mutual understanding and empathy are essential for restoring trust among Nigerians. Now, the Department of State Services, DSS, has filed a 6-count charge at the Federal High Court in Abuja against a 27-year-old innocent Chukwuemeka Onukome for allegedly calling for a military takeover and publishing inciting material on social media. The charges filed by DSS counsel A.M. Dalami accuse Onukome, residing at Umusayo Layout, Oyigbo local government area of Rivers State, of committing the offenses in October 2025. According to the agency, his alleged actions amount to offenses contrary to and punishable under Section 46A and 59 of the Criminal Code Act. The DSS said the suspect will be arraigned before the end of the week. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says journalism remains central to the country's unity and progress and is challenging Nigerian editors to use their platforms to strengthen democracy and national cohesion. The president spoke on Wednesday when he opened the annual conference of the Nigerian Guild of Editors at the State House Conference Center, Abuja. Kehinde Amodu has more.
There has been an uneasy relationship between President Tinubu and the media since he came to office. Tinubu, who was once seen as the darling of the Nigerian media, is hard to come to terms with its fierce independence, which has not been shy to call out his shortcomings. Nigerian editors represent a very important bastion of democracy as they mold the editorial content that shapes national direction and strengthens democratic life. President Tinubu is well aware of this and is urging editors to exercise this power with wisdom, fairness, and a strong sense of national duty.
Nigeria is a large, as you know, and diverse country. Debate and differences are part of our reality. However, disagreement must never translate into erosion of national cohesion. Criticism, when informed and constructive, is a service to the nation. But cynicism that breeds mistrust and despair can weaken the very foundation of the society we seek to improve.
Stakeholders at the event are quick to toe the line of the president and are urging editors to exercise their editorial judgment with restraint.
As we deliberate here today, I charge you, my colleagues, to see yourselves as essential partners in national renewal. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has demonstrated its faith in you through his actions, not just his words. We invite you, therefore, to engage, to critique constructively, and to report with utmost responsibility that demands your participation at this moment of our history.
When government credibility collapses, media coverage of the government becomes suspect. When the media frames every electoral challenge as evidence of systemic fraud, rather than contextualizing it within an imperfect but improving process, it reinforces the very distrust that fragments society. When you, editors and gatekeepers, choose narratives that amplify division because division drives sales, you feed the polarization and make your own work even harder.
But the president of the Nigeria Guild of Editors would have the last say in this discourse. He is proposing the establishment of a Media Freedom and Safety Charter endorsed by the presidency, approved by the legislature, and upheld by the judiciary and the NGE. The Guild is also calling for the repeal of laws that inhibit press freedom and state-sanctioned protection of journalists carrying out legitimate work from arbitrary arrests or misuse of cybercrime laws.
As custodians of information and interpreters of events, editors shape public opinion and set the tone of national conversation. Our decisions, what we publish, how we frame stories, and the voices we amplify have far-reaching implications for democracy and unity. Democratic governance flourishes only when citizens are well-informed and when the media acts as a credible, independent watchdog.
Beyond the protection of media personnel, there are also suggestions for the establishment of a low-interest loan scheme to help media organizations upgrade equipment, expand reach, and create jobs. The challenge laid before the Tinubu administration is to recognize journalism as a public good, deserving of targeted fiscal incentives, legal protection, and developmental support in a bid to strengthen the foundations of democracy. From State House Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
Now, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, NGE, has raised the alarm that the present economic realities in the country have put the media in distress. The Guild also called for the repeal of laws that inhibit press freedom. The president of the NGE, Mr. Eze Anaba, stated this in his welcome address at the All-Nigerian Guild of Editors Conference, ANEC, with the theme Democracy, Governance and National Cohesion, the role of editors, held at the State House Conference Hall, Abuja. He lamented that the economic situation in the country has forced some media houses to shut down, while some that struggle to operate cannot pay workers' salaries. This, he said, has contributed to the increases in unemployment as it sends the workers in such media houses to the labor market. He solicited legislative and executive assistance to make the media viable, as well as corporate tax relief for about 10 years. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has transmitted the National Cocoa Management Board Establishment Bill 2025 to the House of Representatives for consideration and passage. In a letter addressed to the Speaker, Abbas Tajuddin, and read on the floor of the House, President Tinubu said the request was made pursuant to Section 58, subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended. The president explained that the exposed legislation seeks to establish a national cocoa management board to regulate, promote, and harmonize cocoa-related activities across the country, as well as address other connected matters. According to him, the creation of the board will ensure effective coordination of the cocoa value chain, enhance standards, and strengthen Nigeria's competitiveness in the global cocoa economy. At the Committee of Supply, the House approved the report of the Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management on the 1.15 trillion naira domestic borrowing plan to close the unfunded 2025 budget deficit gap.
Right, Honorable Speaker, the bill seeks to establish a national cocoa management board to regulate, promote, and harmonize cocoa-related activities across the country and for other connected purposes. The establishment of the board will enhance effective coordination of the cocoa value chain, improve standards, and strengthen Nigeria's participation in the global cocoa economy.
Consider the report of the Committee on Aid, Loans and Debt Management on the request for the approval of the total sum of 1,150 billion naira, only being the borrowing plan program in the domestic debt market to close the unfunded 2025 budget deficit gap, and approve the recommendation of the report.
Now, an early morning fire has razed at least 44 shops and stores at the popular Singa Market in Kano State. The incident, which occurred around 5 a.m. on Monday, was confirmed in a statement by the Public Relations Officer of the Kano State Fire Service, ACFO Saminu Yusuf Abdullahi. According to the statement, the agency received an emergency call from Mubarak Muhammad, who alerted the Central Control Room about the blaze. Abdullahi said 25 temporary shops attached to the front of the building and 19 stores on the upper floor were completely destroyed, while firefighters managed to prevent the flames from spreading to 24 other stores on the upper floor and all the ground floor shops. He noted that the rescue operations was hampered by poor road access, and parked trailers along the route delayed the fire trucks' movement to the scene. The Fire Service Director, Alhaji Sani Anas, led the response team. During the investigation, they met with the building ahead, Ambassador Garba Ibrahim Magi, and a security personnel, Malam Ibrahim, who disclosed that the entire complex relied on a single electrical switch. This is News Hour on Trust TV. Coming up after the break. Plateau farmers, herders limit activities to homes over fear of attacks. More news when we return. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is News Hour on Trust TV. Let's take a look at our top stories again. Senate approves Tinubu's 1.15 trillion naira domestic loan to fund 2025 budget deficit. And UN names Nigeria, Mali among 16 hunger crisis hotspots. Now moving on to more stories, farmers and herders in Riom, Bariki Ladi, Bokos, Mangu and Basa local government areas of Plateau State have abandoned their farmlands following incessant attacks. To avoid being targeted by gunmen, many have restricted their daily activities to their homes. Trust TV's Ado Musa visited some of the affected communities and reports on their struggles and rising insecurity.
Attacks, killings, and destruction of property have become common occurrences across many parts of Plateau State. Farmlands are being destroyed and cattle killed, with both farmers and herders trading blame for the recurring violence. Fearing for their safety, many residents have been forced to remain indoors, abandoning their means of livelihood. The acting traditional ruler of Rim community, Riom local government area of the state, Dadon Zorong, describes the situation as deeply worrisome, saying farmers can no longer cultivate freely.
da za a samu abinci domin a samu abinci ma ya zama da wahala.
It has become very difficult for us to farm and get the food we eat. We can't go to our usual farmlands for fear of being attacked or killed. We now cultivate only around our houses, where space is limited. And that means we can't grow enough food. Life has become very difficult for us. Similarly, Yawu Idris, the leader of the Fulani community in Marabandere, Basa local government area of the state, laments that grazing has also become a dangerous task.
Yanzu kaga dabbobin nan da kake kallon su anan yanzu dai gashi nan kana gani karfe 12 ma ya wuce har yanzu suna gida.
As you can see, it is past noon and our cattle are still at home because it is not safe to graze far away. We constantly worry about attacks, so we only allow them to graze close to our houses. There is always danger where they go. Despite their frustration, the community say they still believe peace can return if the government takes decisive action to address the insecurity.
Maybe if the government will intervene and they will do justice, he look at the Fulanis, he look at us as his own people, then I think we can come to compromise and live in peace. But if the government did not intervene between us and the Fulanis, it's going to be very hard for us to compromise and live in peace.
A tunanina ina ganin haka tunda a yanzu a Basa ni a yanzu a matsayina na shugaban Fulani.
I am calling on all herders within and outside this area to embrace peace. When there is conflict, we are the most affected because we have families and cattle. Herders and farmers must always promote peace and avoid taking law into their own hands. Any incident should be reported to the security agencies for proper action. According to the fact-finding committee set up in May 2025, chaired by retired Major General Nicholas Rogers, about 11,749 people have lost their lives in Plateau State between 2001 and 2025. The committee also revealed that no fewer than 240 communities have been attacked during the same period. Ado Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
Now, the Nigerian Navy says it will continue to develop strategies to combat security threats such as maritime piracy, insurgency and other criminal activities along the country's waterways. Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Idi Abbas reiterated this during an operational familiarization visit to the newly established headquarters, Special Operations Command in Makurdi. The reports. The Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Idi Abbas, was received at the flight line of the Tactical Air Command Makurdi by Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia and heads of security formations. The Naval Chief then proceeded to the headquarters of the Special Operations Command, where he was briefed on the status of work, conducted an on-the-spot assessment of progress. Vice Admiral Abbas reaffirmed the Navy's commitment to collaborating with other security agencies and stakeholders in addressing security challenges across the Middle Belt region and the country at large.
This is our newest command and is a very critical and strategic command that I feel should be up and running by now. Though it's young, but it's very critical to our operations. So that's why I chose to come here first. But I believe whatever we're doing is supposed to be a whole of society approach. As you can see, I have my other colleagues from other services and security agencies. As you are aware, I think our production has increased. So we want to take that higher, the number of barrels that are being produced to a higher number. And I think with the use of this technology, we can achieve that.
Governor Hyacinth, and represented by his deputy, Sam Ode, commended the Nigerian Navy for establishing the Special Operations Command, noting that the initiative will enhance the security of Benue's waterways
and promote economic development.
Now the Nigerian Navy is consolidating her holds on the territory of Benue, because we need to give the armed forces and the paramilitary the needed encouragement and support so that they can tackle the issue of insecurity, not only in Benue but across the country.
The visit to Makurdi marks the Chief of Naval Staff's first operational tour to any naval base in the country since his appointment.
Now, the Minister of Defense, Muhammad Badaru, has assured that the ministry and the military high command will continue to protect every officer carrying out lawful duties. Badaru gave the assurance while responding to questions from defense correspondent during press briefing on the 2026 Armed Forces Remembrance Celebration at the National Defense College, Abuja. His remarks followed Tuesday's altercation between the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Nyesom Wike, and a Navy Lieutenant, A.M. Yerima, over a disputed land reportedly linked to former Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Awal Gambo. Badaru reiterated that the military stands firmly behind its personnel acting within the law.
The ministry and indeed the armed forces will always protect our officers on lawful duty. So we are looking into the situation and be rest assured any officer on lawful duty will be protected by the not activity lawful duty, doing his job and doing his job very well.
Now, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has launched a joint investigation with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration and the United Kingdom National Crime Agency to identify those behind the importation of 1,000 kilograms of cocaine valued at over $235 million, about 33.8 billion naira. The shipment was intercepted at the PTML terminal of the Tinkan Island Port, Lagos. According to a statement on Tuesday by NDLEA spokesperson Femi Babafemi, operators of the PTML terminal discovered the drug-laden consignment inside an empty container and alerted port stakeholders, including the NDLEA and the Nigeria Customs Service, leading to a joint inspection. Babafemi said field tests conducted by NDLEA officers confirmed the substance to be cocaine, after which the shipment was taken into the agency's custody on Tuesday, November 11, 2025. He said the NDLEA is working with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration and the United Kingdom National Crime Agency to unravel the cartel behind the importation of 1,000 kilograms of cocaine recovered from a container at the PTML terminal of Tinkan Island Port in Lagos. Babafemi noted that the cocaine, estimated about 235, represent the largest single seizure of the substance at the Tinkan port. Now in business, telecommunications operators saw their total earnings rise by 44.7% to 7.67 trillion naira in 2024 compared to 5.30 trillion naira in 2023. This 44.7% was boosted by increased demand for data, services, higher subscription rates, and expanded enterprises solutions, which helped operators cushion the effect of rising operational costs. This is according to the 2024 Subscribers Network Performance Report released by the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, Wednesday. Amid rise in revenue for the year, the operators also saw a surge in their operating expenses, which jumped by 85% from 3.16 trillion naira in 2023 to 5.85 trillion naira a year after. NCC, in the 79-page document prepared by the Policy, Competition and Economic Analysis Department, said right-of-way ROW charges, alongside a surge in inflation, foreign exchange pressure, and rising energy costs, were responsible for the 5.83 trillion naira OPEX. Now, away from Nigeria, at least 6 people have died and several others injured following a stampede during a military recruitment exercise at the El-Wak Sports Stadium in Accra, Ghana. The Ghana Armed Forces GAF, in a statement signed by its Acting Director General of Public Relations, Colonel Evelyn Asamoah, confirmed that the tragic incident occurred on Wednesday morning before the commencement of the 2025-2026 recruitment screening. According to the statement, the stampede broke out when a large crowd of applicants reached security protocols and forced their way into the stadium ahead of the scheduled screening. Videos shared on social media showed long queues stretching across nearby streets, with hundreds of applicants reportedly arriving as early as 2 a.m. to secure a place in line. Colonel Asamoah said medical teams had been deployed to attend to the injured, while investigations were underway to determine the cause of the breach and prevent a recurrence. And now in sports, at least 6 people have died and several others injured following a stampede during a military recruitment. We sincerely apologize for that mix-up. And with that, we've come to the end of News Hour on Trust TV. Do not forget to follow us across all our media platforms and also watch us live on YouTube for more news programs and documentaries. My name is Idris Ayeboture, thanking you for being with us. Good evening.